welcome back to another edition of Down to the Wire. Again, with my NHL analyst, Nolan Thode. And Nolan, how are you doing today?
Not bad. Just came back from a nice little walk out in the country with my dad. It's always nice to spend time with my dad and both outside. So, not a bad day so far. What about you?
I haven't really done much in my mom's basement, but it is beautiful weather outside. Just got to enjoy it the best you can.
No, exactly. Going through these tough times, just doing whatever you can to keep yourself, busy day to day.
Exactly. School's just a gong show with it being online. So just
Yeah,
trying to keep up with that as well.
no, exactly, for sure.
Well, getting into the news, Montreal was suspended throughout the week because two Finnish players, Yoel Armia and Jesperi Kotkaniemi, were added to the COVID-19 list. There was actually some positives for the Montreal Canadiens, this week because not only did they have to, they missed all their games, but the positive that I'm going to get to is Tyler Toffoli, their leading goal scorer. They didn't have to go a game this week without him playing. So that's good. It was announced throughout, Bergevin did two pressers. I'm not sure which one that it was announced in, but, it was announced by Mark Bergevin that, he wouldn't throw him in the fire quite yet because, one practice, he wants to get him back into the groove of things.
Sure.
So, this is quite shocking since, this is the first team in the North Division to have their teams postponed. Games postponed.
Yeah, no, exactly. Earlier in the season, there was, issues with, the American teams, Buffalo, New Jersey, specifically, those two teams had it pretty rough. And the North Division was just kind of like the model for the rest of the league in terms of how well things were going there. But, all that kind of has amounted to this. I guess this one little scare, having games postponed. It's just maybe not a great look for the North Division, and it's interesting to see how it did get, into Canada.
Now, one thing I should mention is that the Montreal Canadiens now play 4 times during 1 week until the end of the regular season. So it is truly now a shortened season. I'm sure Habs fans will now feel the effect of that.
Yeah, no, exactly. And especially in this, tough time in terms of the playoff push, it's going to be exciting to see how, the Habs, they're either going to, get even stronger through this, tough time, or, they might fall apart, but hopefully they can figure things out and we'll see them, playing to their full potential over the next coming weeks.
Buffalo had goaltending issues throughout the week. Carter Hutton was injured in their first game on Monday against the New York Rangers. Dustin Tokarski, who hasn't played since 2016, came in relief. So that's a blast from the past.
Mm-hmm.
Like I mentioned, he played in the Eastern Conference Finals in 2016 with Montreal. It was a leg injury for Carter Hutton. And, for Habs fans like me, when a Rangers player slides into your goalie and injures the leg, that kind of brings some PTSD to Chris Kreider injuring Carey Price.
Absolutely. And especially with the same guy replacing him, Dustin Tokarski, like you said, hasn't played since that series versus the Rangers. It was kind of interesting because, Buffalo's had a couple of injuries and then they traded, Johansson to the Avalanche. So I guess Tokarski was the only option that they had at that point.
Patrick Marlowe is reportedly open to a trade from the Sharks. This doesn't come as a surprise to me because really the Sharks have been, departing from Marlowe and Thornton year in and year out to give them a shot at winning the Cup since they deserve to win the Cup. They're both future Hall of Famers in my opinion. Thornton is second all time in games played. So or tied for second, I should say. But, I thought that it would be really funny in ideal scenario that the Leafs were to get Patrick Marlowe and reunite him with Joe Thornton.
Yeah, no, I'd like that. And as a good fit as well, he's, I think, making the minimum for San Jose. So it would work, with Toronto and all their cap issues. But it brings back last deadline, Joe Thornton, he really wanted to be traded from San Jose, and given that opportunity, obviously he went to Toronto in the offseason, but it would be nice to see Marlowe, maybe go back to Toronto and get that opportunity once again with his old pal.
Dougie Hamilton extension talks are reportedly going to be happening after season's end. I think he'll get a hefty pay raise. He's a UFA at the end of the year, and he is interested in Carolina, but currently he wants to focus on hockey and trying to win the Stanley Cup with the Canes.
Yeah, sometimes players will, not really care too much and go through their extension talks throughout the season and be able to get a deal done. But sometimes it can be super distracting, especially if, things, the GM and the player aren't on the same page and there's a little bit of tension. It might, rub off on the player, playing maybe better, maybe worse because of it. So I think it's, the right decision, especially since how good Carolina's been this year. They just seem to be focused night in, night out on, winning at each and every game.
And Dougie Hamilton's one of those defensemen that is so consistent. He consistently gets 40 plus points per season. And actually, with he extended his point streak to 13 or 14 games, which actually set the franchise record for longest point streak by a defenseman. So I'm sure, Don Waddell definitely wants to keep Dougie Hamilton under contract.
Exactly. He's playing super well for his contract year. And like you said, he's going to get a hefty pay raise. I think Carolina wants to lock that guy up for the long term. They have a great decor, going in Carolina, and he's a huge part of that. And, offensively and defensively, he just has such an impact on the ice. You wouldn't want to lose him.
Well, speaking of his offensive numbers, he's become a power play threat. He has 27 points in 33 games, but more than half of his points have come on the power play. So, that just goes to show that, power plays in playoffs are so valuable since there's so little of them. And when Carolina does get on the power play, they are a threat.
Absolutely. I think, this year, especially, they're poised for a deep run, and that power play, just, the collection of players they have. Last year against the Rangers in the play-in, I remember watching them, and they sort of had, two solid power play units. Just, they have so much talent, and now with the emergence of guys like, Marty Necas and, Trocheck, he's injured right now, but he's come in and been a good part of that top six for Carolina. They just have a lot of options on that power play.
Ottawa has used yet another goaltender this season, with Philip Gustafsson making his first career start. So far Ottawa has Matt Murray, Joey Daccord, and Marcus Högberg, and now Philip Gustafsson. They actually used Anton Forsberg, if I'm not mistaken, this past week as well. So, but anyway, this was Gustafsson's first career start. It ended off, really well, a 2-1 win. But, something that really sticks out is that Rasmus Andersson, for the Flames, tried to steal the puck at the end of the game. And, we all know how big of a career achievement this is for Gustafsson. So you don't like to see it whatsoever.
Yeah, if I couldn't hate the Flames any more than I already do, just seeing that, it definitely rubs me off the wrong way. And, like you said, it's super unsportsmanlike. And for Philip Gustafsson, great for him to get that first win in his first game. He's been talked about for a couple of years now. He was originally with Pittsburgh. I think he came over in the Brassard trade. If I'm not mistaken, and just a solid piece for the future. Ottawa seems to have a collection of goalies at this time.
And it'd be interesting to see who they protect for the expansion draft, because I'm not sure how many games you have to play in the NHL for you to be exempt or for you to be part of the list. But, that's 4 goaltenders that Ottawa has used, possibly even 5 with Forsberg. So I don't know what the exact requirements are, but we'll see what Ottawa does with their goalies.
No, for sure. And you can look to even maybe, leaving Matt Murray unexposed. Maybe Seattle takes him, maybe they don't. But, if you're already regretting that contract 1 year in, it might be a way to get out.
Speaking of first, Keegan Kolesar for the Las Vegas Golden Knights scored his first NHL goal on Monday night. I know for me, I've been following a lot of Vegas reporters on Twitter, and, they've been praising him, with his hard work and dedication. And, it was one of those moments that were on the horizon for him. It was coming. He was always on the ice making a physical presence. He's kind of inserted as in that checking role in the bottom 6, but good for Keegan Kolesar for scoring his first NHL goal.
No, absolutely. If you work hard, you're going to eventually be in the right place at the right time, and it was nice to see him put that one away.
On Tuesday, we learned that the NHL proposed draft lottery changes have been approved by the Board of Governors. The one rule that's in place this draft is that only 3 picks, or is it 2 picks, are part of the lottery? One of the two my example that I'm going to use is, Buffalo. We know that they're most likely going to finish last, so they can't fall any later than third. So they're guaranteed a top 3 pick. Nonetheless, they can't drop to 4 like we saw Detroit do last draft lottery. But yeah, something definitely to keep an eye on. And, we're definitely going to need a refresher of the rules as we get closer to the draft lottery.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's a year where the draft lottery maybe doesn't have as much impact just because, it's such a raw, prospect pool this year, just with everything that's happened within the last year. So for Buffalo, obviously nice for them to secure that top 3 pick, but, nonetheless, who are they going to take? And, what prospect do they feel confident taking, probably first overall?
And it seems as though that the NHL planned for the draft lottery changes, the big ones, to happen in 2022 and 2023, simply because that's when we get better, stronger drafts than this one that we're having, next draft.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've talked about it, multiple times throughout the podcast, but I'm super excited, 10 years down the road, just to look at this draft and see what the makeup of it is. Just, these scouts are really, having to go to work, and, it's not as easy for them to find these clips of these prospects.
The Sabres actually beat their franchise record in losing streak. They're up to 17. Is it winless? I think it's winless in the eyes of the league, but nonetheless, they are on a bad losing streak. And it seems as though these young players that want to be developed there are just getting poisoned by the losing culture. Because, for 10 years now, we've known the Sabres as a losing team, a losing franchise, a team that you don't have to go 110% against. I can take New Jersey, for example. That's a team you have to go 110% against, simply because they aren't poisoned with that losing culture. And, the NHL record is 18 games set by Pittsburgh in 2004. The Buffalo Sabres have a chance at 18 games tonight against Philadelphia.
Yeah, this is not a great season, but, might as well go for the record, go for 19. Just to have, kind of this season wrapped up all in one. Yeah, Buffalo, just the culture there, it hasn't been trending in the right direction, like you said, for 10 years. And it's tough for guys like Eichel, Ristolainen, Dahlin. These are guys that, want to be making impacts on competitive teams. But unfortunately, the way the Sabres have been, it's just not worked for them.
And, the really only good news for Sabres fans, and if they want to win tonight against Philadelphia, who has been struggling heavily, man. And, we spoke about this last week. They still haven't picked up their pace. The Rangers have passed them or are 2 points behind them, one of the two. But Linus Ullmark is starting for the Sabres. He practiced throughout the week with the team. He returned on Friday or Saturday. But that's a huge boost for the Sabres in goal because, Linus has 5 of 6 Sabres wins.
Exactly. I think this is a huge, bringing him back for the Sabres. I think, having him on IR, they went through the whole losing streak, and having him come back, maybe he's not going to go and exactly win you a game, but just, a little bit of a shake up in the locker room, having a new guy in net, could definitely, spark something. And I think Linus Ullmark is, the best goalie in that Sabres system as of now. So having him back is definitely huge.
Elliot Friedman released his 31 Thoughts article on Tuesday, where he basically just gives a thought for the 31 teams. In the article, he said that the Habs have made a push for Mattias Ekholm of the Nashville Predators. And, that's not really surprising at all because there's been rumors about the Habs being in on the Ekholm market, simply because they need a puck-moving defenseman. I think a left shot as well. Because Ben Sherrod has been injured, but like Marc Bergevin has reiterated throughout this whole time in the trade deadline season, he has no cap space available.
Yeah, no cap space available, and also we'll get to it throughout the episode, but they made a trade last week, so how much can you really be bringing in at this point in time? I think ideally Ekholm's a guy that you'd love to bring in, especially now that Sherrod's gone. Ekholm can kind of take his place until he comes back, and Ekholm's an incredible defenseman. We've talked about him before, but I don't think the Habs are going to be doing anything for him, at least the way it looks right now.
three other points that I decided to grab from 31 Thoughts. The first one is, if the border does remain closed past the second round for the Canadian team, you would think they would go to the closest American city. So let's take, for example, the Toronto Maple Leafs and make it past the second round. Well, they would go to Buffalo. But then what if Toronto matches up against Vegas? You probably would want Toronto to be in a more central location just because of, travel and all that going on.
Yeah, there's been talks about, bubbles, and they're trying to, I feel like, avoid, the bubble just because last year was such an extreme and so much for the players to go through. But it'll be interesting to see, these Canadian teams. There's only going to be one of them in the Final Four, but, where they're playing either, if Toronto is playing Vegas, I feel like it would just make sense to play all the games at, T-Mobile Arena. There's no real home advantage, for Toronto. I guess if they played in Buffalo, but yeah, if the border's closed, then, it's going to have an impact.
Philadelphia might consider the Mark Staal route if they aren't going for Ryan Ellis. I think this could be beneficial if the Flyers are trying to make the playoffs, because I'm not sure if you heard, Nolan, but Shane Gostisbehere went out and basically said that their defense is complete shit, and they make Carter Hart and Brian Elliott look like shit. So, he basically, that was like a message to the team there by Shane Gostisbehere. And I think that Mark Staal could play a good bottom third pair on Philadelphia. He could be a good serviceable defenseman for that team. He is also a UFA after the end of this year.
Yeah, he's been playing in Detroit this year, played his whole career practically with the Rangers. I think, yeah, if you're just looking for a guy who could play third pair defenseman and, be a solid defensive guy, you're not expecting Mark Staal to contribute too much offensively. But, like you mentioned with Gostisbehere, I like that he came out and said that just because, the Philadelphia goalies have gotten, so much crap these last couple of weeks. And it's about time that someone came out and, kind of was in favor and kind of supporting them a little bit.
There is a big decision coming for Columbus and David Savard. Columbus has really defeated all odds, and they're still sort of in the race, although they did lose, or they did actually get swept by the Red Wings this past week. So, it's a big decision on whether they want to sell or if they should, build from within their organization and trust the players that they have, and, kind of go with their strengths to try and make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think, that fourth spot in that Central Division is so up for grabs that, we could see them, try to just buckle in and, go hard for the last couple of weeks. However, if they do choose to go the seller route, I think David Savard could bring in, a really good return. He's, good offensively and defensively, more so defensively, and right shot. So, a hot commodity, and I think they could get a good return if they do look to move him.
Hamilton Bulldogs alumni, I know I saw him a couple times with you, Nolan. Mackenzie Entwistle made his NHL debut with the Chicago Blackhawks on Tuesday night. And, I didn't catch the Blackhawks game, unfortunately. But, just great to see that someone I watched in the OHL made his NHL debut.
Exactly. Just, nice to hear that he's out here, even if he couldn't catch the game.
And, Chicago, their youth is insane. And, they got Priest-Suter, Brinkett, Kubalik, and on the back end, they have Ian Mitchell. The youth movement is clearly there for Chicago. And this year it was a true testament to see how well they can compete against some of the best in their division.
Exactly. They've had a lot of young guys stepping up, Patrick Kane also having, a Hart, candidate type season helps as well. But, with no Taves, they've lost a couple pieces within the last couple of years, young coach as well. It seems like Chicago's just kind of, letting their young guys go out there and, do their thing. And it's been working, for the most part.
And this is quite funny and, brings me good joy to hear that the Flyers got booed off the ice at the end of the second period during their game against New Jersey on Tuesday night. And I say this brings me joy because, we're getting back to the time where we don't need injected crowd noise anymore. We could use the fans again. We can finally hear them. And I think what's funny is that I was reading a tweet. I wish I saved it, but I think it was in the Flyers game that when the injected crowd noise stopped, the fans began to boo instead of cheer. I thought that was kind of funny to bring up.
Yeah, the team that's been on the ice hasn't been good for the last couple of weeks. And, Philadelphia fans, they'll be the first to tell you, if you're not playing to your full potential. So it's interesting to see the booing, but it is nice, even if it is negative interaction, just having the crowd be a part of the game.
Patrick Kane moved into fourth all-time among American-born players with 1,666 points after recording his second assist on Tuesday night. Just a stellar player. Showtime is his nickname, and man, do you ever get a show whenever you go see the Blackhawks?
No, absolutely. I was never the biggest Blackhawks fan, and it was a pain watching Patrick Kane, just, in the playoffs, for their cup runs, just, be an incredible player. But, now that I've gotten older and sort of matured, it's just incredible to watch any player of that caliber. And, like you said, Showtime, it's just very entertaining whenever he's playing.
Well, one player, building off that point, one player that we should be on the watch as we grow up is Andre Vesnalevsky. He won his 12th straight game versus the Stars in a row on Tuesday night. And that actually set the franchise record for the Tampa Bay Lightning in consecutive wins by one goalie in one season. And gotta say, man, this guy is going to be a stellar goalie, for seasons to come for the Tampa Bay Lightning.
No, absolutely. He's young. He's already got a cup. He's already got a Vezina, and he's locked up, for the foreseeable future. I think, Stevie Y, when he was in Tampa, he gets a lot of credit for what he did and for good reason. But another big move is, moving on from Ben Bishop and, giving the keys to Andre Vasilevsky. He's, stepped into that starter role and hasn't looked back.
And, I thought something really, really cool about, Vasilevsky. He's making actually $1 million less than Carey Price. And, I guess we could try and have that comparison. Like, is Vasilevsky the next Carey Price of the league? And I got to say, I think he is, because, watching him, he's making acrobatic saves out of the wazoo. Like, dude, this guy is so fun to watch.
Yeah, exactly. With goalies, it's always great when they have a little bit of personality, a little bit of flair. But, for Vasilevsky, he just, a lot of casual fans for the longest time just thought, his numbers were a result of Tampa. But, he's absolutely, one of the top goalies in the league, and he's proving it night in, night out.
On Wednesday, we learned that Tim Peel got, released by the NHL. He actually didn't get fired. I wrote that in the notes, but if you read the wording in the statement by Colin Campbell, he never stated that he got fired. He just said that Tim Peel will no longer be working for the NHL. So you can interpret that as a firing, although it was never explicitly said. But Nolan, I should ask you, do you think that makeup calls are a good thing or not?
I mean, it's so tough to be a ref. I think it's a very underrated job. Not only are you in control of so much of the game, but you also got fans and each bench, yelling at you. So trying to please everyone is a tough thing. Obviously he tried to do that and, didn't really work too well. And I think, the league made the right decision, just kind of, focused on the integrity of the game and, making the game fair for, every team.
And, for my opinion, I struggled with this at first. I was chatting with a bunch of my friends, and I'm like, man, I can't come up to a conclusive opinion to side with. Like, I think about watching games that I've, attended or watched on TV, and I can't think, like, I want the reffing to stay the same. That's my opinion. I've never really had a problem with it. Sure, I'm, as a fan of the Habs, I'm going to get mad at, don't call that trip. Well, that's just bias. There's, as an Oilers fan, you can also agree with me. There's obviously going to be bias with fans, but, I don't know. I don't have a conclusive opinion to share on this podcast. I think that Tim Peel, what he said was, I guess, what most refs agree with, and I think the best thing for what the refs can do is just feel out the game. You can call the rule book, but, I think feeling out the game is kind of better than calling the rule book. That's just my opinion, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. I think, a lot of hockey is just, kind of letting the players go out there and play. We see it a lot more in the playoffs in terms of how laxative how relaxed, the refs are on their whistles. But, I agree with you. Just growing up, I feel like, the reffing has been, it's been fine. Occasionally there's going to be a bad call here or there, but that's just a part of the game. And I don't think, you can really blame the refs too much for that.
Speaking of good news, Winnipeg Jets third line forward Andrew Copp went off against the Vancouver Canucks, scoring 4 goals. They won 5-1, but certainly, Copp was really the only one to solve Thatcher Demko there during that game. That's his first career hat trick, and he plays bottom 6 minutes. So you got to love the depth scoring there. He's actually on the power play, which kind of surprised me. I thought him of more being in the penalty kill role. I never really thought of him being in the power play role.
Yeah, he's stepped up his offensive game a bit this season. When they traded Patrick Laine and Dubois had to go through that 14-day period, I think Kopp, stepped up and was playing those top 6 minutes. And, it clearly has stuck a little bit on the power play, but, the confidence just throughout. I remember looking at the notification and, kind of doing a double check to see that Andrew Kopp was the name I was reading, scoring 4 goals. But it's, nice to see, anyone get a hat trick. And, for him to hit 4, it's nice to see because he's just been a hardworking guy his whole career.
More trade deadline news. The Flyers are going to be aggressive at the deadline. And, that doesn't really come as a surprise. I think the market that they should be in could be, I guess like a middle line, bottom 6 forward, possibly, maybe a bottom pair defenseman, like we mentioned, Mark Staal. I don't think they're in the goalie market simply because, they have Carter Hart. They definitely trust him in a 7-game series if they do make the playoffs. But yeah, I definitely think they're going to be looking to upgrade their defense.
Yeah, I think defense is where they should be looking to, make their impact. I think, the Flyers, they have a great offensive core, first line through fourth line, and, their goalies have been struggling. However, a part of that can be accredited to the defense. And I think, if they're going to target anything, that's definitely what they should be looking at.
And, good news for the Blackhawks because on Thursday, we learned that Kirby Dach was back at practice. He was the first player on the ice during morning practice, and this was actually an optional practice. So, not really mandatory for the players to attend, but good to see Kirby Dach back on the ice, who later made his return to the lineup this past week.
Exactly. Great to see him out on the ice. Big hopes for him this season. I was really ready for him to take, that step. He looked great in the playoffs against my Oilers. And I was excited to see him in the tournament with Team Canada, obviously getting injured. And it's nice to see that he's made, somewhat of a quick recovery, and he's able to, he's going to be able to get some games in this season.
So let's get into the Marc Bergevin presser. This was the first press conference he did since the Habs got shut down on Monday, but this press conference happened on Thursday. So just the quick nuts and bolts. He confirmed that at least one of the postponed games will be remade after the initial end of the regular season. One player tested positive for a COVID variant. The other was a close contact. The player who tested positive for COVID is doing okay. He said that all 7 Canadian teams are going to have their schedules adjusted. Marc Bergevin actually had 2 false positives himself over the summer. He quarantined for 48 hours and passed 2 negative tests. Bergevin also claimed that no protocols were breached, which is good. So that means that they won't face a fine or further suspension from the NHL. He had an update on Ben Sherratt, and he said that he is progressing well in rehab. He reiterated multiple times that he can't make moves because he is tied up against the cap. And he said that there's a strong possibility, which was later confirmed, that the Habs would play 4 games in 5 nights. So that's a busy schedule for the Habs, to say the least.
No, for sure. And, even though it is a busy schedule and it's definitely not an advantage coming, the final stretch of the season, it's got me thinking, they didn't breach any protocols. Maybe they just threw out some random news story or gave someone a little bit of a variant so that they didn't have to play the red hot Oilers 3 times in this 1 week. It was frustrating for me as an Oilers fan. I was excited to see, three Habs versus Oilers games, especially the way the Oilers were playing. But, obviously I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt and say they didn't do it on purpose.
Elliot Friedman made an appearance on WGR 550, which is the Buffalo Sabres radio network, and he said that he doesn't expect the Sabres to fetch a first-round pick for Taylor Hall. I think this is more of a positive for the Sabres since, the draft is so scarce that you're more likely to miss rather than hit because of the lack of scouting. Not only that, but Taylor Hall, who's 3rd on the team in points, but really hasn't lived up to his hype or to, his contract.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think Taylor Hall's an interesting player. I think everyone knows that he is skilled. However, besides his Hart season, he's kind of just been, an average, really good player. It'll be interesting to see if they end up moving him at the deadline and what they can get for him. He's a big piece, but I don't think any team's, willing to, heavily overpay for a guy like him.
We finally have good Jeff Skinner news. He played a season high 20 minutes and 30 seconds on Thursday night for the Sabres. In 84 games under Ralph Krueger, Skinner only had 6 games of 20 plus minutes. So obviously, to further the point that Krueger was underutilizing Jeff Skinner, Skinner has set season highs in minutes played in each of the past 2 games under Granato, the interim head coach. So you can see the vast difference between, Kruger's philosophy and Granato's philosophy.
Yeah, Krueger kind of, gave Jeff Skinner a lot of crap because his defensive game, obviously isn't super strong. And, that's just not the type of player Jeff Skinner is. He's the kind of guy, he likes to, fly up the wing, create chances, scored 40 goals. And that's the type of player he is. So now that, Granato's, giving him this opportunity, it's nice to see him, start to slowly gain this confidence a little bit.
The federal government approved a 7-day quarantine with extra testing for the NHL players that are being traded from American teams to the Canadian teams. I see this as a terrific win because hopefully this will increase further trade deadline talk between Canadian and American teams. Hopefully Trade Center isn't as boring as it may seem. The trade deadline's on April 12th. But I really like how the federal government, really reduced the quarantine there for American teams and Canadian teams.
Yeah, no, and I think I agree with you as it's a huge win. I think, the trade deadline day for me, at least in a normal year, is always, a fun day, just, looking at my phone every 5 minutes to see if anything happened. And, with that 14-day period that it used to be, I think, it definitely has an impact, 7 days less. That's 3 or 4 games more that you can get out of these players. I think it's super big, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot more action this trade deadline than maybe we would have expected at the start of the season.
Well, I just got breaking news. There's no trade, unfortunately, but speaking of the Habs, Jesperi Kotkaniemi just got removed from the COVID-19 protocols, but Yoel Armia remains in it. So, I mean. I'm not going to come to any conclusions there. Actually, I'm not going to say that thought. But, it's great to see that Jesperi Kotkaniemi will most likely be in the lineup tomorrow night as the Habs play the Oilers.
Yeah, no, it's good, to see him come off. Kotkaniemi, you and I have kind of quite the relationship with him just because, we talked a lot about, him and Zadina in that draft. So, I like Kotkaniemi, and it'll be nice to see him out on the ice tomorrow.
Sidney Crosby reached a huge milestone, actually, 1,300 career points. He's the 8th fastest to do so. Another achievement for Sidney Crosby, definitely one of the greatest hockey players of all time.
Exactly. I think I've had this conversation a lot with people I know, that like sports. It's just like, with Sidney Crosby growing up, yeah, he's great, but you would never, dare to compare him to these great legends that, you hear so much about. But, now that you put things in perspective, Crosby's had a great career, just in terms of, what he's able to accomplish. And I think he's definitely, top 10 player of all time in my eyes, and, might be top 5 by the time he's done playing.
I don't know if it's just me, but the Penguins lineup always looks like you're in year 10 of franchise mode on NHL. Like, who is Radim Zahorna? That's my question. He actually scored a beauty of a first NHL goal, but I had no clue this guy was in the organization.
Exactly. The guys like Crosby, Malkin, Gensel now, but, definitely throughout the lineup, there's a couple of questionable names, and, really makes you scratch your head. And, are you not paying enough attention if you don't know who these guys are? But, the reality is that Penguins just, they've been so good for so long that, the prospect pool has been kind of weakened, and they have these random guys coming to the lineup every couple of years.
The Pennsylvania beatdown, the Rangers beat the Flyers 8-3 on Thursday night, and Carter Hart got pulled once again. I feel like I'm a broken record saying that, but the Zibanejad line popped off again. 9 points between Zibanejad, Kreider, and Buchnevich. A natural hat trick for Zibanejad. He set the NHL record for 6 points in consecutive games against the same opponent. That line always seems to do well against the Flyers.
Yeah, they've definitely been taking advantage of when they've been playing Philadelphia, scoring 9 goals last week and 8 goals this week. It's really good, and it's what you need for the Rangers, because Philadelphia is that team that's, near them in the standings. The Rangers, they're just, they've been on a roll lately, and now that they've got, Igor Shesterkin, their number one goalie, back, we could definitely see them make a playoff push.
Taylor Hall confirmed that he is willing to waive his no move clause to get traded. We saw that with Eric Staal, and we'll get that into more detail as we come up on the Friday notes. But I think Taylor Hall is just about to waive his no move clause just to get the hell out of there, of that dumpster fire, as Jack Edwards would call it. To move anywhere essentially.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that, deserves to be on a playoff team. He's only made the playoffs once, and he had to play Tampa Bay in the first round. So it'll be nice to see if Taylor Hall does end up going to a contending team and what they're able to do in the playoffs.
And I think, with Buffalo, they could probably do some interdivisional trades simply because of the state of where they are.
Mm-hmm. And with Taylor Hall, there's a lot of places he could go. I think, a lot of people still view him as a first line player, but I think what his, ideal situation is, ending up on a team where he gets on the second line and kind of is able to, spread the lineup a little bit.
And to your point there, I think he does play better as a second line forward where he isn't relied on as much.
No, absolutely. He can kind of just go out there, not all the pressure's on him, and he's not facing the other team's top players. I think, it'd be a benefit for Taylor Hall.
Small man season as Rocco Grimaldi scored 4 goals, completely lit up the red light district there for Nashville. And, just adding to the Andrew Copp performance there, it's great to see that, these players that aren't stars on their team, that aren't the Scheifeleys, that aren't the Forsbergs or the Tolvanens. Tolvanen is on an incredible point streak right now. It's great to see that someone else is stepping up and providing the goal scoring.
Exactly. If we were recording this last week and you had told me that, Grimaldi and Andrew Copp are both going to be in the headlines, I would have thought, maybe they got suspended or they had a fight or something, even though they wouldn't play each other. But 4 goals for the both of them, it's incredible. And Rocco Grimaldi, he's just kind of fun player. He's out there, a little ball of energy. And, like you mentioned, he is quite short.
We talk about Dallas and their lack of shots, and because of how Rick Bowness plays a more defensive style. Well, the Minnesota Wild played the St. Louis Blues Thursday night, and they shut out the Blues. You think the shots would be like 20 to 35, all right? Mm-hmm. Just around that. But no, the Minnesota Wild finished the game with 11 shots. Like, are you kidding me? How do you get 11 shots through 3 periods, 60 minutes? What?
Yeah, and they still find a way to win the game. It's crazy. Cam Talbot was, super solid for them that game. And, the St. Louis Blues, they've been on a little bit of a dry spell, definitely not able to win when the other team scores 11 shots. It's definitely a tough situation for them.
And, I think Minnesota can be real cup contenders because we see the run that Kaapo Kähkönen had or is still on. He's looking insane. He's a rookie this year, so he's up for the Calder. We look at Cam Talbot. It's like a 1A, 1B situation because Cam Talbot, who's listed as the backup, he's playing phenomenal this season. Just had a phenomenal performance there against the Blues, like we mentioned. So I think the Wild are true cup contenders.
Yeah, exactly. I think they've built their system very well. They've had good teams in the past, but, with the emergence, Kaprizov coming over from Russia, it really, gives them this, element on offense, and guys like, Zuccarello stepping up, and, their defense has always been great. So put some good goalies. It's a recipe for a really solid team.
Roope Hintz had a hat trick against the Tampa Bay Lightning, which ended Andrei Vesnalevsky's streak at 12 games. Like I mentioned, it's great to see Andrei Vasilevsky go on such a hot run, one of the hottest goalies in the league, one of the best in the league. And then, Roope Hintz, who's, been in and out of the lineup. He's kind of struggling with, a lower body injury, I think.
Yeah, he's been in and out of the lineup, and it's weird. Typically guys like that, when they're in, they struggle a little bit because they're dealing with these injuries. But for him to score a hat trick is really nice. And Vasilevsky's streak had to end at some point in time. But, 12 games is incredible.
Getting to the Friday notes here, Eric Staal, that's really the big one there. Eric Staal got traded to the Montreal Canadiens for a 3rd and 5th round picks in the 2021 NHL draft. The Sabres retain $1.625 million of Staal's contract, so that's 50%. I think this is a no-brainer for the Habs to pull off. It brings them center depth behind Danault, Suzuki, and Kotkaniemi. I love this move for the Habs. I also love it for the Sabres. I think this trade benefits the Sabres a lot, because they get futures with third and fifth round picks. It depends on who they pick and how those prospects pan out. But I think, getting that salary off their team was it's a W for both teams. I don't see anyone losing.
Exactly. The Blues, they signed Johansson, last offseason, traded him so 2 off seasons ago, they signed Marcus Johansson, traded him for Eric Staal, and able to move him for anything is really nice. Third and fifth round pick is nothing. It's not nothing, it is draft capital. And I think that's what Buffalo does need at this point in time.
And actually, I wrote an article on the Eric Staal trade to Montreal. And, one thing that I noticed was that the Sabres now have draft picks in each of the 7 rounds. So to your point, Nolan, they now have good draft capital. And Montreal, right, had 14 or 16 draft picks before this trade. So, it seems like Bergevin can play around with those draft picks. And, I hope that Montreal, since I'm a fan of them, gets draft picks for the 2022 draft. Like, they load up there rather than loading up in this draft since it's so scarce.
Yeah, obviously if they can move their picks to next year, I think they would. But, just having draft capital, it gives you, potential to, not only move up in the draft, but, make these trades. And I think for Montreal, bringing in a guy like Eric Staal, a solid, proven guy, he might make the Hall of Fame by the end of his career, and just super solid, moving into a playoff push.
The Sabres are welcoming back fans to select games. The tickets go on sale today, actually, as we're recording this. The games they are allowing fans back are April 3rd versus the Rangers, April 9th versus the Capitals, April 17th versus the Penguins, and April 23rd versus the Bruins. I see the Capitals and Penguins games being complete sellouts from other teams, other fans, not from Sabres fans. I doubt Sabres fans are going to be attending this absolute garbage team.
Exactly. It's not something you would want to watch. However, if you were a fan of any of those 4 teams, you would absolutely want to go see them play against, the Sabres, who can't really find a way to do anything this season.
And, tickets could come cheap since, they haven't really performed up to expectations, if any, at all.
Yeah, exactly. Buffalo's not a great team, so the tickets aren't going to be too pricey either. I think, if I was, a Penguins fan living in the Buffalo area, I'd absolutely want to try to get there for that game.
Elliot Friedman said on a Vancouver radio station that they could possibly look to trade Adam Gaudette, who has struggled to find his role in the lineup. He's been healthy scratched a couple times this season, really inconsistent when he does get in the lineup. But I think, I don't think the Canucks should give up on Gaudette. I really like how he plays. He's currently asserted in, I think the bottom 6, but I think he could be, a good middle 6 forward for the Canucks.
No, absolutely. I'm not 100% sure, but I think he was, in Hobey Baker conversation, whenever he last played in college. So a guy who's able to, be a solid player, clearly. I've always liked him in Vancouver's lineup. I think, he gives a little bit of everything. He gives some skill, some grit, just one of those players. And I do think, being a middle 6 forward is, what is ideal for him. But, if they can get a good return, maybe that's what you do now and hope that, he can turn it around somewhere else.
Bergevin had his second press conference of the week on Saturday. Just the quick nuts and bolts of it. He doesn't expect any more moves, reiterates he's tied up against the cap. There were 2 other teams reportedly after Eric Staal, and Carolina was one of them. So kind of trying to reunite the Staal brothers there. Tyler Toffoli will miss exactly 1 game because Marco Bergevin doesn't want to throw him in the lineup after 1 practice coming back from injury. Bergevin wants, or sorry, I guess that's old news, but, we'll get to Cole Caulfield. That's an amazing signing for the Habs. And there's actually conversations about Eric Staal a while back, but that's when there was a 14-day quarantine mandated by the government. But since that got lifted, that made the trade easier to make.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, Eric Staal, bringing in good piece. It would have been nice to see him go to Carolina just because not only are they so exciting and be nice to see him within that group, but, that's obviously where he made a name for himself. Just for the Habs, good to bring him in. And like you mentioned, Cole Caulfield, I think, his team unfortunately was upset in the first round, I believe, of the college, whatever tournament playoff have you. But, it's a really good guy to, be excited about. And he's coming over to Canada from Wisconsin. He's either going to play for Laval or for the Montreal Canadiens. And, you just got to be excited.
It's been confirmed that he will actually report to Laval for his first game. But, since he's 20 years old and he signed his entry-level contract, he burns off the first year of that contract, whether he plays with Montreal or not. So, it's good to see that hopefully he will get his chance in the NHL. And can tell you that will be anticipated. Montreal media is going to go absolutely nuts. Just like how Anaheim media went nuts for Trevor Zegras. And actually, the projected date for Caulfield to arrive in Montreal or to play with the Habs after his quarantine is done is April 7th, I think, which is one of the rescheduled games against Edmonton. So, we could possibly see Caulfield's first game against your Oilers.
Yeah, no, it would be interesting, and hopefully he doesn't get his first career goal in his first career game. Hopefully we can shut you guys out. But Cole Caulfield, hopefully he becomes Goal Caulfield. That's with a G. One day it's it's a nickname that I like, and if he can become a sniper for the Habs, I think it's just great for the league.
Hurricanes could look to trade one of their three goalies. Peter Mrazek's really been out with injury after, his great start to the season. Alex Nedeljkovic stepped up. He was actually on waivers at one point this season. Yeah. So, crazy to look back and think 30 other teams passed up on him. And then James Reimer, who's played phenomenal. I see this as a good move for Carolina. Not only does it shed salary, but it kind of makes their decision a little bit easier when talking about the expansion draft.
Yeah, no, for sure. I don't know how much value Mrazek has just because of his injuries. However, they've been absolutely rolling without, Mrazek. Reimer and Nedeljkovic have, formed a solid 1A, 1B sort of tandem. If they're going to move one of those three, I think the most likely I'd say is probably Reimer just because, he's the oldest. And Mrazek and Nedeljkovic probably have proved more, to be, the starter for this current team. But you could go any way, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Max Pacioretty's 16th career overtime goal moved him into a tie for 5th all time, and he's tied with Brad Marchand. So, just some players that are so clutch that have that clutch gene that others don't.
Yeah, exactly. Max Pacioretty, he seems, he stepped into Vegas and had a little bit of an off year his first year, just, adjusting. But as soon as they brought in Mark Stone, the two of them just had great chemistry. And, they're always fun to watch in Vegas. And, for him to move up that list, tying himself with Brad Marchand, it's good for him.
I always find it funny looking at the game day roster for Vegas and seeing Chandler Stevenson as the first line center. Because all Stevenson has to do is give it to Stone, who gives it to Pacioretty, or vice versa. I find that hilarious because actually Stevenson was on that Washington Capitals 2018 Stanley Cup winning team.
Exactly, and then he went to Vegas and he's been able to make himself a somewhat of a first line center, you could say. It's interesting. I would have figured at some point, maybe they would have given Cody Glass that opportunity just because, exciting. And if that had a clicked, Glass, Pacioretty, and Stone could have been a great top line, but, they seem to be comfortable with Stevenson, and obviously, they're winning games. So, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Well, speaking of underrated first-line wingers, Carter Verhaeghe scored a hat trick on Saturday. And, this is a guy who didn't really get his opportunity in Tampa Bay, and he's really getting his opportunity now in Florida. And with the injury to Barkov, it's really, surprising to see him perform so well because I know him and Barkov have had great chemistry over this shortened season.
Yeah, absolutely. He came over from Tampa and his numbers were great at the start of the season. And, maybe people could have thought that was inflation, as a result of playing with Barkov, but, able to score a hat trick with him outside of the lineup, clearly he's kind of, shutting up the doubters and, proving himself, that he is, this top six forward that, his numbers back up.
Logan Stanley is a absolute tower. I mean, that guy's like 6'6". I can't imagine playing against him. Well, he scored his first NHL goal Saturday night against the Calgary Flames, and it's great to see him get on the board finally. I'm really excited to see what he can bring to the Jets lineup. I love, the grit that he plays with, the toughness, just how tall he is. I'm all for it.
Yeah, first round pick, I think in 2016, I want to say, maybe 2017, one of those years, drafted in that first round mainly because of his size, just, an incredible, stature, like you said, 6'6", that could even be, short for what he actually is. He's a giant, and, for him to get scoring is nice as well. He's played for the Jets most of this season, and it's nice to see him, break in there.
He was drafted 18th overall in 2016. And to your point there about drafting players that are big, I guess, I think Cole Caulfield was, and, we could also bring up Alex DeBrincat. Alex DeBrincat was drafted 39th overall. And that's crazy to see because, he had a 2-goal performance on Sunday night, really pushed the Blackhawks back in their comeback against Nashville, which ended up falling short. But, DeBrincat has amazing skill for what, for the size he brings in. We look to Cole Caulfield, and Caulfield, dropped off the charts because of his size. And I think it's, I think we're getting to the stage where it's a bit ridiculous to predict someone's NHL capabilities simply because of their size.
No, absolutely. I think at this point in time, it is ridiculous for, size being such an implication because, yes, there is a physical part of the game, but if you're good enough, like Alex DeBrincat, he's a smaller guy, you can still make your impact. Josh Anderson, Burlington boy, and he plays for the Habs. He, kind of slid in his OHL draft because of his size. And, now he's grown into, he's one of the bigger players out there on the ice. And, he just kept working hard. And once the height came with him, he was able to put all the tools together.
More sad news for the Sabres is that Jack Campbell, one single player, has has as many wins as the Buffalo Sabres. And if things can't go from bad to worse for the Sabres.
Yeah, their rival Toronto, they're not playing them this year. Jack Campbell, he's just been great when he's in the net.
On Sunday, we learned that, Tom Wilson returned to the lineup for the Capitals. And actually, they didn't even need Tom Wilson because they went undefeated without him. 7-0-0, 7 regulation wins. That's huge when it's just divisional play. And he actually had 2 Genos in his return. So not only is he making his presence physically returning to the lineup, but also on the score sheet.
No, I think he's a great impact player, but they were able to go 7-0 without him. It's incredible. I think Washington, at least for us, we've just been so used to them being at the top of the standings. So them doing anything, good is just kind of, same old. But, give credit where credit's due. The Capitals have been finding ways to win games this year. And, now Ovechkin, he's been on a little bit of a tear lately. They could be a team to, maybe run it back, from 2018.
And, we have some really unfortunate news with Aaron Ekblad, and he actually got stretchered off the ice after falling awkwardly with Esa Lindell. And, my thoughts and prayers with Ekblad. That is a serious injury. It could be, I dare I say, it could be career threatening. It's definitely an end of the season for Ekblad. We don't know the exact time now. I still check my phone, but as of 5:55, we know nothing yet on the recovery time. But man, he was having a Norris Trophy season, a real breakout season, becoming the true number 1 pick that Florida had drafted him. And it just sucks, man. It sucks to see.
No, yeah, like any player getting hurt sucks, but even more on top of that is the fact that he came in as the number 1 pick, projected to be this stud guy, and it took him a little bit of time, but this season he seemed to figure things out, got a little bit more power play time, just playing those workhorse minutes, and he was having a great year for a great team. So it's a big blow for the Panthers, and just unfortunate.
And, Mackenzie Weegar, who's been paired with Ekblad for the majority of the season, we're really about to see what this guy's made of, because you could argue that Ekblad has really been carrying his point total. So if you are trying to see what a player is made of, well, time to study Mackenzie Weegar's play.
Yeah, Mackenzie Weegar, for advanced analytics people, he's been good for a couple seasons, and now the points are coming. It'll be interesting to see if he can, potentially even step up to sort of replace Ekblad's production in his absence.
The Blues have lost 7 straight games at home. They're 0-5-2. Like you mentioned, the Blues are struggling right now. It's not good. Binnington losing to the Ducks. You have to win those games against the bottom tier teams.
Yeah, no, and I think they were up 2-0 as well. Maybe not 2-0, but they definitely had a lead at some point in the game. Just unfortunate to lose to Anaheim in that situation.
And I must ask, Mackenzie Blackwood's absolute toe save to steal the game, but do you think that puck crossed the line?
It was close, but I personally don't think it fully crossed the line. I think Mackenzie Blackwood, did get there in time, just an incredible athletic save, for a great young goalie who, we're going to be, getting more familiar with each and every year. I think he's incredible and going to be, one of the top goalies in the league in a couple of years.
I agree with you there. I think a majority of the puck crossed the line, but I think there was a smidge of it that was still on the red line there. And I think Mackenzie Blackwood, if the pieces around him can be added, I think he can contend for the Olympic roster.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. Yeah, exactly. I think, he's proven himself to be a good goalie in this league so far at such a young age. He came in, I think he had a shutout streak to start his career, actually. So, great start to his career. And, he's been able to be somewhat consistent through, a couple seasons.
So let's talk about the Nashville Predators. They just leapfrogged the Chicago Blackhawks last night, winning that game 3-2. They're on a 5-game winning streak, 7-3-0 in their last 10. And man, it's going to be weird because a lot of teams were saying Predators are going to be selling Ekholm, Ellis, maybe even Arvidsson, maybe even Michael Granlund. These are some questions that's going to be answered in these next coming weeks.
Exactly. They're only one game above 500, so maybe in any other division they wouldn't be, looking to, keep competing. But, right now, as of now, they have that 4th spot in their division, and they've been rolling, and emergence of guys like Tolvanen, has been, counting towards that. And I think, Nashville is going to have a lot to consider over the next couple of weeks, depending on how their team plays, and getting their captain back, Roman Josi, definitely huge, and he's been good since returning to the lineup.
Before we get to Pags' predictions, let's get to Zach Hogan's power rankings. And first in the North Division, he has the Toronto Maple Leafs. Second, he has the Edmonton Oilers. Third, he has the Winnipeg Jets. Fourth, he has the Ottawa Senators. Fifth, he has the Calgary Flames. And sixth, he has the Vancouver Canucks. And, the team that's not ranked, since they didn't play throughout the week, is the Montreal Canadiens. Personally, I got to say, I kind of agree this time with all of his rankings. I see that the Senators have leapfrogged the Flames and Canucks, and rightfully so. The Flames are still having problems trying to figure out their system with Daryl Sutter.
Yeah, they came in, I think they won the first game under Daryl Sutter, but it's been kind of, a struggle for them since. And Ottawa's been a couple of those losses for the Flames. So I think having them above them is definitely, I agree with it. I was waiting for you to say Montreal, and I appreciate the fact that they're not ranked rather than, 7th place. I thought that he was going to have them all the way at the bottom just because they didn't play. Those rankings might shake up a bit, over this week. Obviously, Montreal is going to get back to action, but, no complaints from my end.
Well, time for Pegs' predictions, and these are the predictions for Tuesday, March 30th games. So tomorrow night's first up, I got the Oilers actually beating the Canadiens. I don't like teams coming out of the COVID. You either play good or you play bad. There's no middle ground. So I think the Oilers are going to beat the Habs. Devils and Bruins. I'm going to take the Devils. The Devils are actually, I think, 4-0-1 against the Bruins this season. So definitely it's something to consider when predicting that game. Capitals and Rangers. I'm going to go with the Capitals. They went 7-0-0, undefeated against, being without Wilson. But now that you add Wilson in the lineup, and it's also tough because the Rangers are playing some of their hottest hockey right now. And, it's the correct time to heat up. The Blue Jackets and Lightning, I'm going to go with the Lightning. The Blue Jackets really haven't figured out who their star players are. They're not playing the top players the right minutes. So I'm going to go with the Lightning. That seems kind of obvious. Red Wings and Panthers, I'm actually going to go with the Red Wings. The Panthers are without Barkov and, Ekblad. Red Wings coming off the sweep of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Definitely going to have some confidence going into Tuesday night's game. Hurricanes and Blackhawks. I'm going to go with The Carolina Hurricanes. Blackhawks have kind of been slumping right now, so that's kind of one of the main reasons. Stars and Predators, I'm going to go with the Preds. 5-game winning streak. They're going to go out and beat the Dallas Stars.
All right, I'll agree with you with the Oilers. I wanted you to take the Habs, so it kind of would have given us a little bit more rivalry. But I agree with your points on, them coming out of COVID. They could definitely just, fall flat. Hopefully the Oilers get the win. I'll go with the Bruins over the Devils. Even though the record, isn't great against them. I'll give the Bruins this one. I'll go with the Rangers actually over the Capitals. Just because I think Igor Shesterkin starting that game. And, they only lost by 1. It was a 5-4 game on Sunday or Saturday with Keith Kincaid in net. So I think Shesterkin makes that much of a difference. I'll go with the Lightning as well over the Blue Jackets. I'll go with the Panthers over the Red Wings. I just think, the Red Wings are playing well right now. And the Panthers are missing some key pieces. But, the Blue Jackets and Panthers just play two completely different styles of hockey. And I think, the Red Wings, it's going to be, different. They're not going to be able to, squeeze out the win. I'll take the Hurricanes over the Blackhawks, just a great team. And then, I'll go with you as well with the Predators and keep the hot streak going against the Dallas Stars.
Well, I'd like to thank again Nolan Thode for joining me on another edition of Down to the Wire.
It's always great, Pags.